According to St. Luke, the 17th chapter. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. This was a pretty rough road, by the way. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and they called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourself to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and he thanked him. And that one, he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except for this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." This is the gospel of our Lord. Please be seated. A dog lover once said, "Who am I that my old arthritic dog would get up from his comfortable place in front of the fireplace and walk over to me and rest his chin on my leg as I sit on the couch? What have I done to earn such love as this?" I learned a couple of weeks ago in our animal blessing service, or our pet blessing service, that lots of you are dog lovers. I imagine this dog owner in this picture might wonder the same scene. Do any of you remember this picture? It went viral earlier this year. And the story here is this dog, whose name is Shep, is a 20-year-old German Shepherd. And that's his owner, and they're in Lake Superior. Now, has anybody ever had a dog live to the age of 20? It's pretty old for a dog. And Shep was very, very arthritic. And it was really hard for Shep to get comfortable at the end of the day. But what would make him comfortable is if his owner would take him out into the water and just hold him where his joints could rest and could float in the water. And Shep would relax and he'd be able to fall asleep. And I don't know if you can see in the picture, but Shep's eyes are closed, and then his owner, as soon as his owner was confident that he'd be asleep, he would take him inside and just rest him on the bed, and Shep would sleep comfortably until morning. And they would wake up and they'd start their day's routine over again. So this went viral in probably May, and then it went viral again in July when the owner posted it and said, "My heart is broken. Shep has died. I'll post more later. Thank you for all of your love and support." But it goes to show just how much our animals can touch our heart. I mean, there's not a lot of people who would do this for a stranger. I guess you're looking at that picture. I see it out there. You're probably wondering what I look at. But not a lot of people who would do this for a stranger's dog. But if you have a dog, of course you would do it, right? If you get a chance or something like that. Jesus is going about his business today, which I suppose is just as much the business of walking from place to place and looking around and talking around and thinking around and checking out what's going on in the community and working with the people. And he's walking on the road from Galilee to Samaria. I had an opportunity to go to Israel in 2009, and I wanted to see that road, and my tour guide said to me in 2009, "Are you kidding me? We are not going to go on that road. We're not going to go there 2009 years later." So imagine what it was like then, right? He said that's one of the roads that you don't go on. And my tour guide was Jewish and I was Christian, and he said that, we're not going to be safe on that road, and we're not going to be safe on that road. So in Jesus' day, people weren't going to be safe on that road. So it was a questionable road to be on anyway, but who cares when you're Jesus, right? So Jesus is walking on that road, and there are 10 people who were walking, and the translation, the New Revised Standard Version that we read from today, and you can check in the Bibles in the pews in front of you, say 10 people who had leprosy were walking. They don't say 10 lepers, because we don't want to define people by their diseases, right? They're just people who have leprosy. But in the time, these people were sent to live in leper colonies, or colonies for people with leprosy, because they weren't supposed to mix among folks, because they would contaminate and they would be made unclean. And I'm not just talking about contagions that would go around between them. I'm talking about their morality. They were suspect of being of unclean moral character that gave them leprosy in the first place. And so they certainly couldn't be around other pure people, because that would make those pure people ill too. So they're being shunned, and they're probably going to the leper colony where they're supposed to live out the rest of their lives, because they're sure not going to get better in a colony for people with leprosy. And they cry out to Jesus from a distance. They don't even come close to him because they don't want to make him mad. They call out to him, "Will you please have mercy on us?" And Jesus says, "Go on your way, go back to your priests, tell them that you're better." The priests having been the one who sent them off in the first place. Well, there's a church you want to join. Everybody's not welcome. And so we don't really hear what happened with the other 9. But it's just a short time later when one of these, whose body would have sores all over it, and who could probably not really eat, and who would have been limping, and he would have been kind of damaged goods, looked down and would have seen his body just kind of healing up, like in the sci-fi movies, and said, "Oh, I'm getting better. I'm going to go find that guy who healed me." And he ran back. And he fell before Jesus, and he said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I love this picture of Shep and his owner, because it makes me think about baptism. It makes me think about how that dog, and yeah, I'm a dog person. It makes me think about how Shep is held in this body of water that's so much bigger than him, and how it holds him together. And that's what I believe baptism is all about. When we're baptized, we're held in a pool that is so much bigger than ourselves. It's a blessing that invites us to be part of something that is so much bigger than what we can carry from day to day on our own. Way bigger than a pumpkin, but like the size of a pumpkin patch, if you're speaking of children. I had the opportunity in the last month, and I asked both of them for permission before I spoke about this, but I had the opportunity in the last month to see 2 of our people at work. Gene is not here today because he's got a sick child. Vanna has the flu. But Gene Brown is a mechanic. You probably you might know Gene, or maybe you've seen him. He's got the long hair. And he works on my car when my car is very, very sick and my car has to go to the doctor. Gene is my car doctor. And I went to his Exxon station to have him work on my car when some mysterious light turned on, and I said to Gene, "What is this mysterious light turned on?" What does that mean? He's like, "Oh, the one that says service engine soon, it means that you need to service the engine soon." Is that why they use those words? He said, "You really have a problem when it's flashing. Is it flashing?" And I said, "No." He said, "Okay, well, it still means you definitely have something wrong if that light's on." So I worked my schedule so I could go and see him the next day. And while we were there, I took my laptop with me, and he said, "Well, I can give you the Wi-Fi password, but come back to my office because it's this long, like Wi-Fi passwords are, and you can type it in back there." Okay, so I walked through the garage, and I walked into his office, and the manuals and the codes and the tools and the things that were around in this mechanic's office were amazing to me. I mean, and everything was covered in mechanic stuff, like, grease, oil, fingerprints, all that stuff. I think Beck does a great job of letting him come home every night. But there seems to be so much genius in this one little office. And we don't really see what people do when they go to work, when we come to church. But I felt like I was in the Holy of Holies when I stood there in this little room at the Exxon garage. Years and years of his experience and his help. And I asked him if I could pray for him while I was there. And he said, "Yeah." And as I was praying, it occurred to me how beautiful it is that there aren't more accidents on the road because of people like Gene, who work on our cars and teach people like me what it means when a service engine soon light comes on in your car, and then take care of it. He explained to me what the problem was, and it was a long word. And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, it's basically a little door and a little thing. Do you want me to tell you more?" I was like, "No, stop. I don't want to know anymore." And then, because I asked Bob, calling my accountant, to file for the longest extension I could possibly get on filing my taxes for this year, and he kept reminding me that the real deadline is Tuesday, and said, "Can we really meet on your taxes, like, soon?" Yesterday morning, or Friday morning, I guess, I met with Bob and Irene in their tax office. And as we sat there and exchanged numbers over the table, the genius that happened in that office just blows my mind. I've come clean with you people on that I don't do Excel, right? So that's like one thing. But the other part of what happens in an accountant's office is amazing to me. How the numbers work and how this happens and all the things that go on in the background of Bob's mind. Well, I'm giving him like a list of numbers. And it all works. It all happens. And see, baptism propels us for life in the world. Now, this is two people. Jane's wife is a veterinary surgical assistant, another genius. Bob's wife, Irene, works with children who are severely differently abled because of autism. And she helps kids who can't eat a meal with their hands. She helps them in public schools. So now we have 4 people who are incredibly geniuses. But you know what? Everyone has incredible gifts to go into the world and make a difference. And this is what baptism propels us for. All that water that holds Shep, this is what baptism is. It tells us that we are in a life that's not just our own. It tells us that we belong to something that's way bigger than us. And so if you're an engineer, or if you're a teacher, or if you are a policy analyst, or if you're retired, or if you watch kids, or if you are a parent who stays home, or if you are a driver, or if you are a social worker, or if you are a public safety servant, whoever you are, God has given you abilities to hold you in a world where God holds us all. And baptism propels us forward to live in those things. We have lives that are propelled by faith. Never crossed my mind that I might be an accountant. Good thing, right? Do you see any clients coming to me? But I'm a pretty good pastor, some days. Not all days, but some days. You don't want me fixing your car. But I can be a pretty good friend. I can cook pretty good soup. You know, we're all different. And baptism propels us for life to live differently. Where do Lutherans fall on the baptism spectrum? We baptize infants and children even before they say that they want it, before they say they want to be in that body of water, because we need to surround children and infants with love and promises. God's and the faith communities and the parents, that they get to grow up in this body of water that's bigger than them. And a child is much more than mine or ours for the parents. A child is God's creation. And that's why we baptize little ones. Parents aren't enough, and you guys know that, right, when you have kids? Like when Sarah came your way, did you say, oh yeah, Mitch and I can handle this? I'm taking a laugh and no. We all know that we need something bigger than who we are. We baptize teens and adults because we all know that we need to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and it doesn't depend on our own understanding. Martin Luther said this: "The blessings of baptism are so boundless that if our timid human nature considers them, it may doubt whether they could all be true. No greater jewel can adorn our body and soul than baptism. For through it we obtain perfect holiness and salvation. Baptism is so full of comfort and grace that heaven and earth cannot contain it." Baptism is so full of comfort and grace that heaven and earth cannot contain it. The water of baptism holds you. It does and will hold you. It can hold you in ways you may or may not understand, very much like what Jim shared in that welcome. That faith isn't always ours to understand, and that's okay. Like baptism, faith holds you. It's a gift that keeps unwrapping itself. You know, sometimes those 9 lepers get a bad rap for not coming back to Jesus and saying thank you. And yes, I believe that coming back and saying thank you would have been a good and holy thing for them to do. But I guess if I'm honest with myself, I probably only get it when God does something good for me maybe 1 out of 10 times anyway. There are probably 9 little parts of me that miss all the good things that happen. I'm just grateful that God keeps on blessing me anyway. And I'm grateful for that one time that I do come back. God continues to surround with love and grace. God continues to find you. It's a season of fall harvest. It's a season of thanksgiving. It's a season of gratitude. I pray that we all find reasons to be grateful. Maybe even for those things in our lives that seem like they're the biggest pains in the backside we've ever known. Because even those things can propel us to give thanks sometime or another. Because when it's all said and done, the pool isn't ours anyway. It's God's. The water is God's. And we get to be in it. Not by ourselves, not for a solo swim, but we're on a team here. And that's a pretty blessing. Amen.